Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Well, dear students, today we are going to start the poem The Darkling Thrush by Thomas Hardy. And let me introduce a little about the poet as well as the poem. Well, Thomas Hardy actually is a Victorian novelist. He is famous as a novelist, and his time is from 1840 to 1928. So this marks actually the last half of the previous century, the 19th century. And that is the Victorian time. So he is a Victorian novelist as well as poet. And this poem is said to be composed on 31st of December 1900. So that's symbolically actually marking the turn of the century. And as far as the poem is concerned, the very first stanza is right before you. It's a lyrical poem and written in four 8-line stanzas, and it has a regular rhyme scheme, as we can say, gate, desolate, grey, and A. So that makes it A, B, A, B, and then sky and I, that is C, and eyes and fires, that makes it D. So the poem follows this rhyme scheme throughout, that is A, B, A, B, and C, D, C, D. And actually, this poem reflects Hardy's pessimistic worldview at the end of the 19th century, as he was not very hopeful about that. But the end marks a juxtaposition of sudden vision of hope. So that is the introduction of the poem. And now let us see the stanza one by one, and we are going to explain. In the very first stanza, as we have here, the poet, the speaker, actually I marks the poet, that is the speaker, and he is leaning on a coppice gate, that means a gate to a small woodland. And when frost was spectre grey, frost means it is described as ghost-like thing, spectre grey, and it's winter's dregs, as we see here. That means the last and the dreariest part of the winter, and it makes the day look like lifeless, in fact. So the weakening eye of the day, that means it's almost the end of the day. So we were saying the weakening eye of the day, that means actually the day is almost over, and the sun's weakening eye is actually fading as the darkness is now going to spread. And as far as the other things are concerned, he says the tangled vine stems, that means the plants are dead and tangled, described as here it is, strings of broken lyres, and suggesting that the music of life in fact has stopped. And it said all mankind, that means all people, they have gone to home, to the warmth of their fires. Well, they have almost left the world empty and kind of ghostly. So Hardy actually is painting a scene not only of physical winter, but also of emotional and spiritual emptiness or desolation. Well, as far as the literary devices are concerned, the stanza is full of imagery, visual and tactile images of cold and decay, silence, spectral grey. It says winter drag and broken lyres. So, and then in fact there is a case of personification, as you sing the when frost was spectre grey. So frost has been given human like qualities. And then there is a simile as well, when he says like strings of broken lyres. So that is compares the wine stems to broken musical instruments, which is a symbol of lost harmony or sound of music. Then there is a use of alliteration as well, repetition of consonant sound, as we say frost was spectre grey. So then drags made desolate. So we see that there is a use of alliteration, that means the consonant sounds, repetition of them. And as far as the tone of this opening stanza is concerned, it seems to be very gloomy, quite melancholic, and at the same time reflective as well. So I believe the stanza, I have explained the stanza in detail to your understanding. Okay, dear students, let's move on to the stanza number two. And it starts: the land's sharp features seem to be the century's corpse outlined. That means actually the poet is now comparing the entire landscape to a dead body. Corpse means a dead body, and that is the land's sharp features and look like the face of a corpse, representing the death of basically the 19th century is talking about. Uh, and the sky, it seems, acts as the crypt or tomb, a shrine, and the wind wailing, and the wind lamenting. That means it's crying, wailing through it sounds like a funeral song. That means as if somebody is dead. So he's saying that the whole century is dead, and even the wind is lamenting. And then in the next half of the stanza, he says, actually, his observation goes beyond himself to all life and the natural cycle of the growth, that is the pulse of germ and birth. And it seems lifeless, uh, hard and dry, he says, and not only the nature but also the human spirits, every spirit, he says, every spirit upon earth seems fervorless. That means not only the nature but also the human spirits are very tired. They have left with no passion, and they seems to be empty inside, shallow. So this stanza actually expresses the poet's deep despair at the end of the century, symbolically the end of vitality, end of faith, end of purpose, end of mission, objective. So seems to be overall a very gloomy kind of situation. As far as the literary devices are concerned, again, there is a metaphor when he says the century's corpse outlined. That means the century is compared to a corpse, and the sky to a crypt. That is a very powerful symbol of death. So both of these are the examples of metaphor. And then the personification, again, the century is treated as a dead person. And again, we have the case of alliteration, like here, centuries, corpse, and cloud, canopy, and germ and birth. So again, we see that there is a repetitive sound of consonants. Then we have a very strong case of symbolism here, representing the decay of the word, uh, loss of faith, and in fact, the poet's emotional deadness. And the tone, again, if we talk about tone, it is dark, hopeless, and definitely it is reflecting the end of the era, the 19th century, and sadness of that century. So that is how, dear students, you need to understand this stanza, and you should be able to identify the literary devices that have been used by the poet. All right, dear students, we have moved to the stanza number three, and there is a sudden shift actually here, because we see at once, that means suddenly, a voice rose among the bleak twigs. Bleak means very sad or dark, and there is a voice that is coming from the plants in a full-hearted even song of joy illimited. That means the silence is broken actually by a bird, a very small old thrush, and it is singing with full energy and, as it is said, of joy unlimited. So it is singing with full energy and joy, and we see that all around, despite its frail body and its ruffled, frail, gaunt and small, beruffled plume, that means the ruffled feather, that means his feathers are quite damaged and means battered by cold winds. Despite of the frail and small body and battered uh, plume and feathers, it is singing passionately in the cold evening, in the dark evening. And actually, the thrush's song contrasts sharply with the bleak and desolate surroundings, where it seems to bring new life, a new hope, and an emotional warmth to the lifeless landscape. So, actually, the poet's use of ordinary thrush adds, I believe, realism. That means hope can come from the most unlikely or very humble sources. So, that is how the mood actually of the poem is shifted. Now, let us see what literary devices the poet has used here. Well, there is a contrast between dead, gloomy word and the bird's joyful song, right? Because it says bleak twigs, but then there is a full-hearted, even song. So that is a contrast. Then there is imagery, as I've already said, the bleak twigs that actually create imagery, and blast, beruffled plume, growing gloom. So all these create images, and we are able to understand what situation is there. Again, there is a use of alliteration when it says full-hearted, even song, and then frail and gaunt, and then there is a personification. The bird flings his soul. So actually, that is how that is it. Flings his soul. That means giving its song emotional and actually the spiritual strength and power. Obviously, there is a symbol. The thrush actually represents hope, faith, and even resilience in the face of despair and hopelessness. I've already told you there is a shift of tone, and actually, the tone has been shifted from despair to wonder, and there is actually a silver lining. That means there is a slight optimism that the poet has added to the poem. All right, dear students, we have come to the fourth and last stanza of it, and it says, "So little cause for carolings of such ecstatic sound." Well, the poet actually is amazed at this caroling and ecstatic sound. Actually, the poet reflects that obviously there is no visible reason. Actually, the poet is not very hopeful, and he believes that for such joyful singing he cannot find a good reason. And ecstatic means very happy, joyful, because the word, he's saying terrestrial thing, that means the world all around still looks lifeless, uh, and there is nothing around. Even for long distance, the poet could not see anything that would make him joyful or happy. And even then, yet the thrush actually continues to sing as if it knows of some hidden, as he says, blessed hope, that the poet obviously is saying, and I was unaware. That means the poet cannot see or understand what actually is making this thrush sing in such a passionate and joyful manner. So actually, Hardy does not claim to share the bird's faith, but obviously he admires it. The thrush's song becomes a symbol of unseen hope and spiritual endurance, quite a contrast to the human hopelessness or despair. So the poem actually ends on an uncertain but uplifting note. Perhaps there is a hope even when we cannot see it. And the poet actually saying, as a human being, I cannot see. Maybe the bird is more hopeful than the poet. So that is why he is singing all around. Now let us see what actually in terms of literary devices the poet has used. Well, I believe there is an irony uh, because he says I could think there trembled his hand. He believes that the bird's joy finds joy where no joy seems to exist, because he says he's written on a terrestrial things. That means everything looks very bleak and lifeless, but even then the bird finds joy. And then there is symbolism, as I've underlined here. The blessed hope represents faith or the spiritual renewal or rejuvenance. And then alliteration, as I've said, a happy good night here, or so little cause for carolings. So these are in fact the uses of again the consonant sounds, and making the use of alliteration. Now, if you talk about the tone, actually now it is reflective and quite humble, as is the in the presence of that thrush, and there is a slight optimism as well. So, dear students, I believe now you must be able to understand this poem very clearly and completely with all the literary devices that I have shared with you. So, I hope you must have understood the meanings of the stanzas line by line, and I've tried to give you the meanings of the words as well. But definitely in the coming lectures, I'll be talking about the themes and the vocabulary of the poem in detail. So, thank you very much, dear students, and I hope to see you in the next lecture.